Honduran candidates for the National Congress denounced an alleged fraud committed by the National Electoral Council. Russia and the United States are working to organize an interview via video conference between Presidents Putin and Biden. Lebanese Minister of Information resigned Friday, seeking to end the diplomatic crisis the nation faces with the Gulf countries. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. We now focus in Honduras, where the transparency and legality present in the presidential elections differs from the situation that has been seen in the last few hours with the deputies' candidacies. Several candidates for the National Congress have denounced an alleged fraud committed by the National Electoral Council. They pointed out an alleged criminal network which they accused of inflating, disappearing, and modifying the votes to facilitate the admission of influential and, above all, very controversial political figures from the parties that participated in the elections held on November 28th. The accusation stated that although the variation is not as significant in the number of deputies as established in the first projections, the problem lies in the surprising movement of deputies within each political organization. Candidates to the legislative body said the National Party aimed to impose their presence in the Congress to prevent significant changes in the country.
What we are asking is to review those voting records, to review the votes of some ballot boxes in which we have doubts, and that finally the will of the Honduran people be respected. It is useless for us to get to the National Congress if we are not going to have that qualified majority to repeal the penal code, the CD law, and all that corrupt legislation they have created, the law of secrets. Therefore, if we do not dismantle these wicked constructions, it will be of no use to us to have a minimum representation in the Congress, where the only thing we are going to do is to see how they continue to divide the country as they see fit.
And in Chile, a recent poll revealed that the presidential candidate for the leftist party, Apruebo Dignidad, Gabriel Boric, would become president if the elections were held this Sunday. The latest poll showed that Boric would get 54% of the votes. Likewise, the study indicates that the approval rates of President Sebastián Piñera reach 18%, 8 percentage points more than in October's poll. The survey was taken between November 25th and 29th to people over 18 years of age throughout the country. The president of Peru, Pedro Castillo, called for the people's unity and summoned all the country's political parties to dialogue, while stressing that he will defend democracy no matter the cost. The head of state was in charge of the closing statements at the Congress of Urban Peasant Patrols. The executive stressed his speech against corruption and the strong discrediting campaign led by opposition sectors and the media. He also assured to stand firm while reviewing the contracts from private companies that manage public resources, and reiterated to keep renegotiating contracts with the transnational consortium that exploits the gas Camisea field.
Therefore, I would like to announce that I have taken the decision to summon the leaders of the political parties represented in the Congress of the Republic, so that starting tomorrow, they can come to the President's office to discuss the major issues that the country is facing, such as reactivating the economy, how to fight the pandemic, the actions and responses to the earthquake in Amazonas, and also to see about political stability and governance.
Former inspector of the Bolivian Navy, Admiral Aldo Bravo Mendez, was arrested in Trinidad, Beni as part of the investigations to identify those responsible for the Sencara and Sacaba massacres committed during the November 2019 coup, led by Janine Áñez. Local media reported the apprehension of the military officer who must give his statements on the events of November 2019, when the military and police crushed protests in support of former President Evo Morales, killing more than 20 people and injuring dozens of others by gunshot wounds. At least 14 people are being prosecuted by the interdisciplinary group of independent experts for the Sencara and Sacaba massacres. This group of experts, formed by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, is investigating every event before and after former President Evo Morales' resignation. The admiral was transferred to La Paz, where the investigation is taking place. Clashes between armed gangs in Martí-Sant on the southern outskirts of the Haitian capital left at least 5 dead and several wounded. These people were traveling in private vehicles and public buses when they were hit by gunfire from gangs fighting for control of the area. According to local press reports, armed gangs from Grand Ravine and Village de Dieu joined forces to attack those from Tibois, from Fontamara who retaliated and even were supported by the population. The armed groups have been battling over the area since June, when hostile clashes intensified and forced more than 19,000 people to abandon their homes and seek refuge in public institutions. The Cuba 2021 Business Forum, the most important event of the year for the country in terms of trade and investment, concluded on Friday after 4 days of exchange with representatives of various organizations and sectors to strengthen and establish new relationships. The event gathered about 3,000 participants from 86 nations, including government officials, chambers of commerce, trade and investment agencies, Cuban and foreign businessmen, and non-state forms of management entities, who followed the sessions online. The final day of sessions included an exchange with foreign companies about business opportunities in tourism, the biopharmaceutical industry, agricultural, and renewable energies. The forum also included a panel dedicated to the opportunities for Cuban nationals living abroad to do business and invest in the country.
A total of 1,162 appointments were arranged between visitors and participants through the forum's platform. Qualitatively, the second business forum was also superior, as it included presentations by distinguished protagonists of the main transformations taking place in the country and panels where the current issues of our economy were addressed.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez said progress is being made in the talks with the International Monetary Fund on the purpose of refinancing a $44 billion debt Argentina owes the IMF.
We will face the debts that others have generated. This agreement will not be at the expense of the country's development or based on any adjustment program. We continue to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund with firm steps and a steady pulse. The debt problem is not a problem of Alberto Fernandez's government. It is a problem of Argentina as a whole. We are not working to get rid of a problem. My responsibility is to work so that the debt does not postpone Argentine development any longer. Growth is needed to fulfill the commitments taken on. Any other logic is only a chimera.
Brazil registers an urban housing deficit in the millions. We have more details with our correspondent Brian Muir reporting from one of the country's favelas.
Brazil has an urban housing deficit of over 6 million units. Now, this was caused by agribusiness land grabs that took place in the rural Northeast between the 1950s and the 1980s, forcing huge numbers of people to migrate to the cities in the south and southeast, like Rio and Sao Paulo, which saw its population grow from 1.5 million to over 24 million in the urban area between 1950 and the year 2020. As a result of this massive migration, favelas formed, which are informal settlements like the one I'm standing in right now, where people just occupied land and built their own houses, often in precarious locations prone to flooding and landslides. The National Urban Reform Forum has done a study which proves that there's over 5.6 million potential housing units available in Brazil just in empty buildings in the downtown areas of its cities. This is caused by real estate speculation, land banking, and in a lot of times it's empty government buildings. Now, the housing movement fought during the 1980s to include language in the Brazilian Constitution guaranteeing the right for people to occupy abandoned buildings in which the owners haven't paid their real estate taxes for more than 5 years. And this has led to the growth of all kinds of social movements that organize these squatting activities and then lobby with the local governments to force them to convert it into ownership-based low-income housing. This week in Sao Paulo, the Frente de Luta pra Moradia, or FLM as it's known, coordinated the occupation of 10 buildings in the downtown Sao Paulo area, with hundreds of families now waiting and demanding their constitutionally granted right to housing, which, according to the Brazilian Constitution of 1988, overrides any kind of profit interest.
And both chambers of United States Congress passed a bill on Thursday to fund the government through February 18, 2022, narrowly avoiding a government shutdown before a Friday deadline. The Senate voted 69 to 28 late Thursday to pass a short-term measure that the House approved hours earlier. The measure, which President Joe Biden is expected to sign, gives Congress several more weeks to work on a longer-term funding plan covering the entire fiscal year. Democrats hold a razor-thin margin in the Senate, which is split 50-50 between them and the Republicans, that being ties broken by Vice President Kamala Harris. The longest shutdown in U.S. history happened under President Donald Trump, 35 days stretching into January 2019, when Democrats refused to approve money for his U.S.-Mexico border wall. Russia and the United States are working to organize an interview via video conference between Presidents Putin and Biden. The news were disclosed by the Kremlin in a communique in a spike in tensions between the two powers over the military escalation in Ukraine. Kiev demands NATO that it refuse all Russian petitions of guarantees. Press Secretary for the Russian presidency, Dmitry Peskov, said none of the parties have been able to agree on an exact date of mutual arrangement. Putin and Biden met this year in Geneva and on that time also discussed the situation in Ukraine. NATO's escalation against Russia and its allies continues. On Thursday, the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and the European Union imposed fresh sanctions against Belarus for an alleged electoral fraud. Western powers have been targeting Belarus since President Alexander Lukashenko won a sixth term in office in last year's election. The U.S. Treasury Department designated 3 aircrafts as blocked property and sanctioned several Belarusian state-owned companies, government officials, and others who support Lukashenko's government. The European Union, meanwhile, imposed travel bans and asset freezes on 17 more individuals, including senior border and military officials, government representatives, and judges. Austria's ruling party, known as People's Party, named Karl Nehammer Minister of Interior, the organization's new leader and chancellor. The resignation of former chancellor of the party, Sebastian Kurz, had caused some stirring among members due to his implication in a corruption scandal, only to be announced on Friday that Nehammer, Austria's Minister of Interior, is a new head of the party by unanimous vote, and also sits as chancellor. The Conservative National Party renewed its seats that await formal appointment by the country's president.
It is a great honor for me personally that I am endowed with this vote of confidence, that I am now allowed to be the chairman of the People's Party. I say this deliberately because the People's Party as a movement has always fascinated me for a very long time, and it is indeed a privilege for me.
Pope Francis appealed for a sense of fraternity in an open-air mass in Cyprus on Friday, the second day of a visit to the Mediterranean island that has focused heavily on the asylum seekers' situation. As a gesture of solidarity to those fleeing poverty and conflict, the pontifex was expected to offer 50 people now in Cyprus a chance for a new life in Italy. The Pope delivered his open-air mass at Nicosia's main football stadium to some 7,000 faithful, many of them workers from the Philippines and South Asia, who make up a large proportion of the 25,000 Catholics in mainly Greek Orthodox Cyprus. The head of the Catholic Church urged Cypriots to welcome refugees and embrace their home's history as a crossroads of cultures.
Dear brothers and sisters, faced with our own inner darkness and the challenges before us in the church and in society, we are called to renew our sense of fraternity. If we remain divided, if each person thinks only of himself or herself, or his or her group, if we refuse to stick together, if we do not dialogue and walk together, we will never be completely healed of our blindness. This is what I ask for you, that you always remain together, always united, that you go forward together with joy as Christian brothers and sisters, children of the one Father, and I ask it for myself as well.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back. The Lebanese Minister of Information, George Kordahi, resigned Friday, seeking to end the diplomatic crisis the nation faces with the Gulf countries. Kordahi's resignation comes after his comments on the Yemen war prompted responses from Saudi Arabia and its allies in the Gulf. The reactions aggravated Lebanon's situation, a country that faces a harsh economic crisis and political tug-of-wars. Kordahi himself declared to the media that his demission was agreed with Prime Minister Najib Mikati, seeking a relief in tensions with the Gulf countries in an effort to guarantee a resumption of bilateral ties.
I decided that the time was right, because we are offering something that could provide Lebanon with an exit out of this crisis. I hope this resignation opens a window or a recess in that wall towards improved ties with Gulf countries.
Syrian authorities confirmed the murder of 10 workers of the Al Jarrah oil field in the eastern province of Deir ez-Zor, a crime committed by Daesh. The terrorists bombed the 2 vehicles in which the workers of this oil facility, key to the development of the province, were traveling back to their workplace. Fadel Najjar, governor of Deir ez-Zor, assured that the terrorists intended to affect work and production at the facility, as well as in factories and the agricultural sector in the entire region. Najjar also assured that Daesh, together with their Western allies, are trying to put an end to the reconciliation process taking place in the province. To date, more than 5,000 fighters have been pardoned after laying down their weapons. Deir ez-Zor was recaptured by the National Army in 2017 as part of the fight led by the government of President Bashar al-Assad against terrorism and violence. New Delhi, the capital of India, shut down schools on Thursday over high levels of pollution in the air. The government of the city ordered schools to close as an increase in toxic smog levels were reported. This is not the first occasion, as in November a similar event occurred. A Supreme Court hearing warned authorities to reduce the air pollution levels in the capital of over 20 million inhabitants, holding responsible for the smog problem mainly vehicle emissions and industrial contamination. New Delhi's levels of hazardous particles in air are 14 times the daily maximum recommended by the World Health Organization, posing an enormous risk for inhabitants of developing chronic heart disease and lung failure. And India announced its first 2 cases of the Omicron COVID variant months after a devastating wave of the virus killed more than 200,000 people around the country. Top Health Ministry official Love Agarwal said 2 men positive to the Omicron variant live in southern Karnataka state. Local authorities reported that neither of the 2 identified cases had been in contact with each other and one had no recent travel history. India has yet to impose international travel bans, but on Monday, the health ministry ordered all inbound travelers from high-risk countries to undergo mandatory post-arrival COVID testing, along with the random testing of other international arrivals. India has the world's second highest number of cases, with more than 34 million confirmed infections. Its nearly 470,000 COVID deaths are the third highest, behind the tolls in the United States and Brazil.
For the past 1 week, the number of beneficiaries who are getting vaccinated are in terms of hundreds, about 300, more than that every day. So because of awareness and government has insisted for the vaccination.
I want to prevent disease from everything. I want to fight against COVID, new wave, Omicron. I want to fight.
The World Health Organization disclosed that it still has no reports of Omicron-related deaths. Spokesman Christian Lindmer referred to this in a recent press conference.
I have not seen reports of Omicron-related deaths yet. Talking about Omicron, let's also not forget that the predominant variant right now still remains the Delta variant. So Omicron may be on the rise and we may come to a point where it takes over to be the dominant variant, but at this point, the very dominant variant remains Delta. And we have to protect ourselves against Delta, against COVID-19, and the measures that work against Delta work so far, as we know, mostly also against Omicron.
We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Diego Martin. Thank you for watching.